Hello, and welcome to Prove It with Batya, a show in which I bring on somebody who I really admire and really respect and really like and really disagree with. Because as Americans, fundamentally more unites us than divides us. And it is so important for us to remember that. And we can only remember that when we're engaged in civil discourse and debate. If this is your jam, hit that subscribe button because there is a lot of content on YouTube feeding you what you already believe and very little helping you understand how your fellow Americans who also love this country see the world. To that end, I am so excited for today's debate partner, the wonderful Dan Turrentine, who has devoted his life as I have to this exact cause. You can catch Dan on the Huddle, the DC Huddle, every single morning. Guys, I never miss this show, I promise you. I never miss this show. I watch it at the gym every morning at 8:30. And if I miss it, I watch it at 1.5 speed when I get home because I do not want to miss a minute of it. It is Dan, the Democrat, and then Sean Spicer, the Republican, and Rachel Bade, one of the best sourced journalists in America. And the three of them go through everything you need to know. It's literally everything you need to know. It's the best show. Watch it. Subscribe to that show. Subscribe to this show. How you doing, Dan?
I'm great, thank you. What an amazing summer we're having politically so far here.
Never a dull moment.
No, never ever.
It's interesting because the week before, I would say, was not a great week for Jews on the right. I myself was inundated by Groyper, invective telling me to go home to my country. This is my country. Sorry, guys. And all manner of anti-Semitism in my mentions because I had the temerity to say that J.D. Vance had humiliated us with this stupid MOU with Iran that nobody believes is going to last. But this week, Dan, was quite the week for the Democrats on the Jewish front. There was, of course, this huge victory for the DSA. You had Daria Lisa Chevalier, who I believe you live in her district.
I do, yep.
Ran away with this victory, not mind you, with working class voters, but with the sort of over-credentialed college elites like herself, who she's been in school for 14 years, has never gotten a job and walks around bemoaning the lack of affordability in New York. She hates Israel. She hates America. She wiped her dirty hands on the American flag. She doesn't believe in prisons. And to me, she's part of the larger problem with the DSA, which is that they act like this is economic populism when actually it's just the latest version of vanity morals for the elites, which is abolish ICE and free Palestine. Of course, she was not the only one. Brad Lander, who is Jewish, won his district against Dan Goldman. The major divide between the two of them being that Brad Lander was willing to go out on a limb against AIPAC and to say that Israel had committed a genocide, something that I think is just a ridiculous canard. Nobody actually believes it when they say it, but you have to say it to get elected. Now, interestingly, Brad Lander was endorsed by Zoran Mamdani, who endorsed 3 DSA candidates in New York last week. Brad Lander, Daria Lisa Chevalier, and Claire Valdez. Now, Mrs. Mamdani on election day posted a photo of herself in which she endorsed, she said, go out and vote, and only mentioned 2 of the 3 of her husband's endorsees. The one Jewish person he had endorsed, who, by the way, still calls himself a Zionist, she refused to endorse Brad Lander. Now, I had Brad Lander on my show this week, and I asked him about this. Now, Dan, would you like me to play for you his answer?
I love it. Yes, please do.
Let's play that show.
Mrs. Mamdani posted a photo of herself on election day in which she told people to go out and vote and mentioned 2 of the 3 candidates who her husband had endorsed. Your name was left off. Why?
I mean, look, I was proud to have the mayor's support in this race. I was proud to cross-endorse him a year ago. You'll have to, I can't speak for her politics.
Why do you think she left you off?
I mean, look, I guess I'll say something a little different. If I think of myself as like anyone in Israel, it's standing together. It's this group of Israelis and Palestinians fighting for equal rights. And they just formed a political party. And I am so proud of them, Omdim B'Yachad, standing together. They're on the boycott, divestment, and sanctions list. It's part of why I don't participate in BDS. They're fighting for Palestinian human rights and equal rights. But they do it in a way that not everyone views as, that some people view as normalizing.
Okay, we could pull out of that. I realize now watching this, Dan, what he was trying to say is that because he is a Zionist Mrs. Mamdani would not endorse him because that's considered normalizing, okay? So meaning Zionists literally are not allowed in the cannot get voted in. Anti-Zionism is now the most important, it's the sine qua non for belonging on the left. So if you are a Zionist on the left, it doesn't matter how much you've done for the other causes, you're out. Whereas if you're Tucker Carlson and you hate Israel, doesn't matter how conservative you are on every other issue, you're in. And there was further proof of this, and then I'm going to let you have your say, Dan. Scott Wiener, who will probably be the congressman in San Francisco. He's running for Nancy Pelosi's seat. He's at the front of the pack. Super gay, super pro-queer. His singular legislation was to make it so that if you are a gay man who has sex with somebody 10 years younger than you who's a minor, you do not have to register on the sex offender registry. Okay, that debate for another time, but you can see how this person would be a hero to certain parts of the left. He was chased out of Pride. Cher, can you pull this up? He was chased out of Pride despite these massive, massive accomplishments for the gay community because it took him too long to say that Israel had committed a genocide. Let's play this.
Scott, I think your legislation on trans issues and your legislation specifically protecting queers on the sex offender registry is fantastic. Like, I really applaud you for that, and I think you deserve to be here for that. But I think your housing policy, and specifically your housing policy aligning with YIMBYs, and I think your policy, and I think your policy on the genocide in Gaza, and I think your policy on the genocide in Gaza is terrible. I think you do not belong here.
All right, we can pull out of this. It goes on like this for, I guess, another minute and a half. They literally chased him out of the park. Dan, I can tell you, Jewish Americans look at all of this and think, geez, like the price of entry is to denounce, you know, our fellow Jews in Israel, to say that Israel doesn't have a right to exist, to be like Brad Lander, who I'm sorry, but to sit there and say he wants to be in a party led by a man whose wife would not utter his name because he is a Zionist, and they feel that the Democratic Party is no longer a welcome place for Jews. What do you think?
Well, I think I think the Democratic Party is a welcome place for Jews. I think that Berkeley, or a park in San Francisco and New York City are not indicative of the entire country, and even frankly, probably all of the cities that we just referenced. The extremes of the Democratic Party are there, as you say. There's no doubt about it. I mean, even the mayor won't go that far, right? I mean, his wife is doing what she did, but she is not the political leader in New York City. I don't think that is the place where most Democrats are nationwide. What I do think is a place that most Democrats are, and I think increasingly most Republicans are, is the kind of unconditional support for Israel. I think is gone within the country right now. I think the idea that there is this special relationship, that we will provide them arms, that Israel, I would say, and I think most Americans believe, they're in a neighborhood that's a rough neighborhood. Most of their neighbors don't think they should exist. Most of their neighbors kind of are dead set on trying to drive them out of the region, if not, kill them. But I think the idea that the United States is going to kind of carve them out and hold them up and do everything they can to support them, I think it is a casualty of the forces that have been released with America First. It is just this like inward looking. On the right, it is money going to them, should be spent at home. And on the left, there is this kind of frustration that goes back to the DEI era, to the kind of righting all of these wrongs that people, believe, that some people in the Democratic Party believe. And it's a scary time, I think, for Israel. I don't think most Democrats, I'd say 85% of the Democratic Party, I don't believe is anti-Jew. Like, I don't believe they say Jews should not be in our party. There is an extreme faction that I think, unfortunately, does say that.
But first of all, I agree with you about the Jews, but like a Jew like me who says I am unapologetically pro-Israel, I have my own criticisms of them. I'm happy to share them. You know, I'm not cool with anything that happens in the West Bank. Pretty much think that's a disaster. But you know, like but I'm not going to bend the knee for you and say what you need me to say in order to belong. Like it's I'm not willing to pass a purity test. You know, to I'm not welcome, right? Like unless you're willing to say the things, you're not welcome. And that conditionality is only given to Jews. And that's why I call it anti-Semitic. It's not just criticism of Israel. Like the right is critical of Israel, right? The thing I want to respond to also is, you know, the idea that there was this like right before this era, you know, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, before October 7th, there was this like, you know, on the left, on the right, we uncritically support Israel, you know, or that there were these halcyon days where I just think that never happened. Like the Obama deal with Iran, Israel lobbied hard against that. I mean, hard. Like Netanyahu broke all protocol. He addressed Congress and it still passed. I mean, that was like 10 years ago, you know. Before that, you had James Baker telling George Bush, F the Jews, they don't vote for us anyway. You know, you had Nixon, an unrepentant anti-Semite. Like to me, this narrative that there was this like pre-now version where no criticism of Israel was allowed and every piece of criticism was called anti-Semitism and we're not going to stand for that anymore. You can read the comments here. We're not going to stand for it anymore. It's such bullshit. Like it's just childish bullshit and rewriting of history. Like as if that happened. There was never a time when you couldn't criticize Israel. Obama hated Netanyahu and he had no problem admitting that. I think what has changed is, I've been thinking about this a lot, like in 2019, Ilhan Omar said, it's all about the Benjamins, about Jewish support for Israel. And why, congressional support for Israel. She was responding to Glenn Greenwald and explaining why there's so much support for Israel in the Congress. The answer to that is because the American people are actually Zionists. But okay, she said it's all about the Benjamins. And then when asked to clarify, actually by myself, she said, I'm obviously talking about AIPAC. And she was forced to apologize within days. She said, I'm so sorry I didn't realize this was an anti-Semitic trope. And she was censured in the Congress by Democrats. I mean, they watered it down a little bit, but it was a censure of what she had said. It was completely obvious to everybody that suggesting that American Jews giving money to pro-Israel candidates were somehow undermining what's best for America and engaged in dual loyalties to a foreign government, that this was just a classic, disgusting anti-Semitic trope that had nothing to do with reality. AIPAC is like the NRA. Americans who like guns are allowed to fund candidates who are, you know, pro-gun, and Americans who like Israel should be allowed to give their money where they want. Fast forward 7 years, Dan, and you have almost every progressive candidate is literally running on the thing that Ilhan Omar herself apologized for because it was anti-Semitic. Like that is, I think, the thing that has shifted, not criticism of Israel, but a willingness to talk about it in a way that is utterly fantastical and deeply anti-Semitic.
Well, I think, let's back up. I think if you go into 90% of the congressional districts in this country or the states, Israel is not a top 5 issue, right? This was the trap that Democrats got into in the last few years, unlike the war with Ukraine, right? Biden was out there talking, in fact, even this past weekend, he talked about saving NATO again. Right. Like, you know, but most elected officials, like if you go around, most voters, even in our own party, Black voters, working class voters, it's affordability, it's healthcare. It's like Israel and the Middle East is probably like 8 or 9 on their list, which is why the war in Iran was so kind of unpopular from the get-go, because most Americans said, why are we there? Like, what does that have to do with us right now? And so I do think that what has happened now is, and this is where, like, to some extent, like AIPAC is going to have to look in the mirror. They are. In order to win in the last several years, a lot of these races, AIPAC has started running ads that have nothing to do with Israel anymore, right? They're trying to find a soft, you know, Achilles for their target on whatever issue, right? And Democrats became enraged that what they were doing was, hey, you won't talk to me about the substance of the issue, right? Should we or should we not provide arms or whatever? but you're going to go try to find something in my opposition research file and take me down in another way. And that was where I think the huge schism in the party started to really develop. And then you add the fact that there became, and this was a strategic decision that AIPAC made that I think was crazy, and I'll be curious if they do it with Republicans, and that is to say there is no middle ground. If we give an inch, we could lose a mile. Therefore, you can be with us on 85% of the issues, but if you're not with us on that other 15%, we're going to come after you and try to find someone who's 100. And that was crazy. And I'll be curious on the right if they do it now, because I've said this before. I don't think in 2028, any candidate in any party is going to be 100% with Israel. I don't.
What's interesting
maybe Ted Cruz.
So I don't. You think Marco Rubio is not going to be like?
No, I don't think I don't. I think here's the problem, Batya. I'll give you this line. So I think Israel, it's like 30 billion or so we provide in arms.
It's 3 billion.
Is it 3 billion? Okay. Yeah. I thought I saw. Okay.
Like the least amount of foreign aid we give to any one of our allies.
Fine. 3 billion. 4 million Americans have lost health care because we let the subsidies expire. You could put in Israel, Ukraine, Rwanda, China, anybody. If you run an ad and you just polled and said, should that money go to Israel or to healthcare? I can tell you, because it got, beaten over the head by us, by Donald Trump the last couple of years. It's 70-30.
Yeah, but Dan, I'm a pretty pro-Israel person. I don't support aid to Israel. Like, that's not the pro-Israel position, I don't think. The pro-Israel position is like, Israel has a right to exist.
I think most Democrats agree with that. Oh, I do. I do think most Democrats.
I want to say something you said about AIPAC. I think it's so dumb to chase people out who agree with you 85% of the time. Yep. That's why I freaking hate the DSA. I mean, how much of a difference is there between Daria Lisa Chevalier on policy that she will actually be able to vote for, and Espadrille, is that his name?
Yeah.
I mean, give me a break. This is Dan Goldman and Brad Lander. How much do you think they disagree on? It's less than 15%, Dan. It's probably 6%. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Everyone does it. But somehow AIPAC uniquely is evil for doing what everybody does. And I think that is the problem that I have with this. Like, you think Netanyahu lobbied harder than Zelensky? He didn't. But somehow he is the evil puppeteer, puppet master behind the scenes, even though Trump does what he wants when Trump wants to and doesn't do it when he doesn't. Whereas Zelensky has actually gotten away with, getting a lot of money that actually the majority of politicians wouldn't have wanted to give him. So I just feel like it's so weird. And as a Jewish American, I'm like, maybe there's another reason that uniquely AIPAC and Israel and Netanyahu and myself as a Zionist are like the root of all evil. But I would like to hear what that reason is. And so far, I've not heard one.
Well, I don't think that I definitely don't think but look, you said something earlier. AIPAC and pro-Israel supporters have to look in the mirror about. They did not like the first Iran deal. They did go and try to sabotage. They tried every single thing humanly possible to sabotage that, and then to take out, to make it well known that we are not happy with the Democratic Party. We are not happy with Barack Obama. Okay, that is fine. Israel thought that was in their best interest to take that position. But you cannot be surprised that the party then said, whoa, time out. You outright tried to kill the deal that we thought was in the best interest of our country. It's ironic because here we are, what are we now, 13 years later, and the same deal is back on the table. And at best, we're going to get the same deal.
A much worse deal.
Okay, fine. But my point is,
no,
look,
I agree with you. I think that Netanyahu has behaved like a statesman. No, and
not smart.
By the way, I have my own criticism of the way that they waged the war in Gaza. I've been very vocal about that. I'm probably one of the people who tries to platform Palestinians the most in American media. Despite all of this, despite being attacked relentlessly by groypers on the right. Like, it's very obvious to me that the mainstream of the right is trying to protect the pro-Israel position.
Yeah, I would agree about that.
Except JD Vance, let's put him aside. Whereas the mainstream on the left is increasingly falling prey to the energy from the DSA types. And again, it's not about criticism of Israel. You know, like there's a lot of people who are, I mean, Trump is critical of Israel. Trump went out and blasted Netanyahu over Lebanon. Nobody called him an anti-Semite. Nobody.
Yeah, he's earned the trot.
Exactly. It would have been ridiculous. And even when he and JD Vance were kind of saying similar things, there was just a world of difference between how Trump was portraying Netanyahu, even in his criticism, and the way JD Vance was like making stuff up about Israel that was like really bizarre.
Well, I think, look, we're going to have in 2028, this is going to be a topic. I mean, you know, just look at where the lanes that like Josh Shapiro and Rahm Emanuel have started carving out. Brashear, you know, whether it's Newsom or Harris or Pete Buttigieg, like go down the dais of people, even AOC. I will be very curious to see, because this race is going to be fought, you know, in New Hampshire and Nevada and Michigan. I mean, just go around the map. The states likely to be the first 5 or 6, which, you know, usually whoever brings momentum out of that ends up becoming the nominee, not always. I'll be really curious to see to what extent this kind of DSA tug, which is real. I mean, tomorrow in Colorado, we may get some more candidates. Diana DeGette may get defeated by a DSA candidate. Michael Bennet, or I mean, not Michael Bennet, John Hickenlooper, the senator, may lose his primary to a DSA, like out of the blue, nowhere. So, you know, does it take over the party? It's possible. That would be concerning to me. Or does the kind of sane, reasonable middle kind of push these people to the side and just say, you know, you are just that. You are a minority within the minority, not the majority of our party.
I think it has everything to do with whether Graham Plattner, who, by the way, I don't think he believes anything. I don't think he's anti-Semitic. He just has a Nazi tattoo, but like he has a lot of Reddit posts and none of them are about Jews. Like, I don't think he believes anything he says about Israel. I think they told him this is the party line, but I think it depends on whether Graham Plattner and Abdul El-Sayed win. If they win, the Democrats are going to lean into this crap. If they lose, I think they're going to do a hard right turn back to the center because they hate losing. What did I want to ask you about? Here's my real problem with it is like, so they'll be like, oh, the DSA is all about support for Medicare for all. And again, I'm like, no, I support Medicare for all. You support abolish ICE and free Palestine. Those are the issues that you guys are running on. You don't care about Medicare for all at all. Like, there's no effort to create a consensus around this commonsensical thing that, by the way, the majority of Republicans support. Like, if they really, that's what Bernie Sanders would do. He'd go out there and create coalitions. Like, he knew that there were people voting for Trump, millions, who support Medicare for all. And he was always speaking to them. These people like Chevalier, who just won in your district, like the whole thing is really like their heart beats for the free Palestine. She has said that that is the most important issue to her. It is they who are obsessed with a foreign country. And they are pretending to have some sort of like socialist economic agenda to help the working class when the working class does not vote for them. Susan Collins, she is ahead almost by 20 points when it comes to people without a college degree in Maine, ahead of Graham Plattner, even though he leads her by 2 points. So it's the same thing happening all over again. This is like, you know, this is basically this Daria Lisa Chevalier. She's a perpetual grad student. This is the faculty lounge politics dressed up like in this Mamdaniist, like as if this is actual socialism. Your thoughts?
Well, again, one district in Harlem does not make the entire country and the entire party. And I do think if you listen to, let's say, Graham Plattner, and you watch on YouTube his speeches, Israel's barely mentioned.
Right.
He talks a lot more about healthcare. He talks a lot more about what it's like trying to have 3 jobs in Maine, to get by, and having to work in a Starbucks just to get the healthcare, even if you're a fisherman or whatever. So, I mean, I go back to, this is not a top issue in most of this country. I'd be very curious in that Michigan Senate race in the general election if this is a huge topic. Mike Rogers may want to try to make it a big topic, but I will be curious kind of where the battle lines are, come this fall. And I look, it is true. There is an energy to abolish ICE, which I think is insane. there is this like 100% pro-Palestinian, segment of the party that I also think is insane. Like, I think you can be critical of Israel, but to your point, they have a right to exist, and you have to recognize they live in a neighborhood where a lot of their neighbors want to get rid of them. Like, both physically get out of the neighborhood,
and including Zoran Mamdani, who thinks Israel should not exist as a Jewish state.
Yeah, and look, but it's interesting, Batya, as you know, when he got the nomination last June, he spent part of last summer meeting with the Jewish community, trying to assure them, I'm not going to be. That says he knew the general election politics. He had to be a little careful. And that's in the bluest of blue cities, New York City. So I do think this message would not do well in the rest of the country, even in the rest of New York state. So we'll see, though. You may be right that I'm a little naive, but those are my words, not yours. But
I really want to be wrong about this. I don't want there to only be one party for the Jews, especially if it's, the J.D. Vance party, which I don't think it will be, precisely because of this reason. But I want the Democrat, and I do believe, I am also very optimistic and very Pollyannish about this because, Israel's very unpopular right now, but the vast majority of Americans are still Zionists. Like, they do not agree with Zoran Mamdani that it shouldn't exist as a Jewish state. They probably are somewhere between me and, somebody a little bit more supportive of funding than I am, because I think Israel's paid a really huge price for the funding. And I agree with young people who say, like, look, we give all this money away, and what do we get from it? I think we get a lot in terms of intelligence sharing and strategic partnership. But if we have failed to make that case to the younger generation that is valuable, and we have, then they should not be asked to fund it. I mean, that's just like a basic populist tenet. But like, to me, that's not, like it's the way that they talk about it that makes me feel like I don't belong there. They don't see me as belonging there. And in my conversation with Brad Lander, Dan, like, it sent a chill down my spine because he has worked so hard to belong in this place that would really rather not have him. And to me, that's humiliating. And as a Jew and as an American, I would never bend the knee like that. I was asked to in 2019, and I said no. Like, the whole point of being an American is we don't accept belonging in a political party, like at some price where we have to denounce somebody that, or something, or that. And especially as Jews, because we've been so central to the left, by the way, but also to this country more generally, there's like that. It's ridiculous. And it's so shocking. And I hear from Jews all the time about how shocked they are that this is even happening.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, as I say, there are a lot of litmus tests in both parties these days that make you cringe. And this is one that, if you want to run in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, the intensity on these issues is real. But again, the mayor's wife is not the mayor, and there is a little bit of a difference there. I would not elevate her to the leader, but at some point he's going to have to answer for her. You can only tap dance so long before people are going to, put her under the microscope. And I have a feeling you may hear more about that.
If I was married to a person who refused to endorse someone because they were Black, it wouldn't matter that he was not Batya the journalist, like,
yeah, that's a
because I would have chosen to marry somebody like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dan Turrentine, thank you so much for this very difficult conversation that you made. Very enjoyable. Nonetheless, what are you working on these days? What are you thinking about?
I am actually on this note. I'm really fascinated by Colorado tomorrow. I'm really curious to see what happens. There's two House races, the gubernatorial and the Senate. These are all Democratic primaries. Incumbents facing upstarts. I think three of them are socialists. The AG, Phil Weiser, who's challenging Senator Michael Bennet for the governor's race, is not a DSA member, but he has come at him from the left. And then we're going to have Wisconsin. There's a gubernatorial race coming up there. Again, a real firebrand progressive. And then Michigan in August. I'm really curious this summer because I think they are all canaries in the coal mine for 2028.
Definitely.
And I'm going to be curious. And Israel is one of those issues, not in the Wisconsin gubernatorial, but in some of these others, that it's huge. So,
do you think Abdullah Sayed will win?
I do today.
And do you think he'll win the general?
I think it's 50-50. I've seen the polls that show him up 1 or 2, but as a Democrat who wants to win the Senate, history says that no candidate that progressive, take the Israel issue out of it, just a super progressive candidate has never won statewide in Michigan. Now, they haven't until they do, and he may be the first, but I do worry that he is a very divisive figure. Will Haley Stevens and others endorse him? Will Debbie Stabenow endorse him? That could be the one state where Democrats remain divided, as they were in 2024, where Kamala Harris and Donald Trump drove the truck right through the state. So we'll see.
Well, we will be watching, and I will be watching the huddle tomorrow morning to hear everything else I need to know about this. Thank you so much for joining me, Dan. God bless and protect you.
Thank you, Batya.
And the rest of you come back tomorrow, where I will have somebody else on to debate a big story of the day. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.